by the prison. Okay. So they did that investigation, and then in 2017 there was a cabinet paper, and it's one of the things that said there was any residential development would require, and this is really important, a district plan change. So the planning rules, as I said, as they stand at the moment, and as they've stood for at least 30 years, without anybody disagreeing with them, have said open space B. They've also had a ridgelines and hilltops protection over them as well. And in fact, the new district plan, which is going through its hearings process at the moment, actually adds to that, because it adds what we call a special amenity landscape. So it basically says this is pretty special land. So without changing something, development is not possible. So the question is how that change happens, if it happens at all. And it also said district plan would require a district plan change and public consultation. It also said that council, this is Cabinet's expectation, council would seek to ensure that the scale of any development was in accordance with the surrounding environment, including skyline, and complemented the proposed historic and recreation reserve. So it's reasonably clear kind of sense of direction that, from Cabinet, that this is a pretty special piece of land. I mentioned that Community Working Party, which included government agencies and iwi and council and so on. Their vision that they came up with, and again it's variations on the theme, in 2014, the Watts Peninsula and surrounding area is recognised as a distinctive national destination that protects, enhances and celebrates natural heritage values and open space values while integrating tourism and commercial activities that contribute to its financial sustainability, the Miramar Peninsula and the Wellington region. So variations again on that theme of open space, in this case more than perhaps the heritage theme, but those two themes resonate throughout. And Cabinet also at that time, 2017, agreed to work with the council to set up a heritage reserve, and they expected that to take about 4 years. The council put money aside in its budget to help set it up, and the government also put money aside in its budget to help set up the heritage reserve. So, where are we at? That's the key parts of the history. Where are we at in terms of the district plan process? So as I said, the current district plan really doesn't allow for development, neither does the proposed district plan. So what we've got though is that the council notified its district plan in July last year. As I said, those are the zonings, they're very protective. And what happened is people are allowed to make submissions. And there was a submission from Taranaki Whānui, which was lodged before submissions closed on the 12th of September. And what they effectively wanted to do was to remove all of those protections. Open space, special amenity landscapes, significant natural areas, ridgelines and hilltops, all gone. And to have 27 metre height limits, certainly for Shelley Bay. Wasn't clear from the reading of it as to whether that also included the top of the hill as well, but we believe it does. Now, having picked that up, of course, a few of us said, well, hang on, we're not so keen on that. So we put in further submissions to say we don't agree with that. And the key point with there is we want to sit down and talk this through. There may be some development possible, but we all need to be part of deciding what should happen there, not have something run through. If the Taranaki Whānui submission was successful, effectively you will be able to build, we think, 27 metre high buildings across the top of that hillside without any notification at all. You will get no say. So we don't agree with that. Then the other thing, on the 3rd of January we saw in the newspaper, it's a good time because most of us are probably away. The 3rd of January we saw in the newspaper an application was being lodged in the name of Taranaki Whānui and the Wellington Company, that's the way it was presented in terms of the newspaper, to have this application fast-tracked. Now the fast-tracking is under a piece of legislation set up under COVID, and the purpose of that legislation essentially was to urgently promote employment, to support New Zealand's recovery from the economic and social impacts of COVID-19 and support the ongoing employment. And of course that was set up at a time when, that act was passed at a time when we thought the construction industry was about to collapse. We thought nobody would build anything because of COVID. We didn't really know what we were facing. And in fact, the reverse has happened. If any industry in the country has got supercharged and we've got shortages of labour, etc., and it's going to be worse now with the effects of Cyclone Gabrielle, it's construction. And construction prices have gone up like that. So we think that the Act really has passed its use by date for everything, not just for this. But they've applied to fast track. Now the way that fast track works is that the Minister has a choice. He can do a number of things. The first thing he can do is say, no, forget it. I just don't think this one's appropriate at all. Go go and use the normal process. The normal process will be all the district plan rules, probably notification, etc. Or he can say, actually, I'm thinking about this one, and if he's thinking about it, he's got to ask, there's a whole series of ministers he's got to ask. He's got to ask, for example, the Minister of Arts, Culture and Heritage, the Minister of Conservation, the Minister of Housing, there's a whole bunch of them. He's also got to ask the local councils that are relevant. Now that's certainly Wellington City and probably Wellington Regional Council as well. And he may ask anybody else. And so we've said two things. One is, we don't think you should make this fast track, we don't think it's justified. But secondly, if you are thinking about it, then can community organisations, we've made some suggestions about those community organisations who represent this community, have the chance to at least put some input and say why we don't think that fast tracking is an appropriate thing. It flies in the face of everything you've said, all the promises that you've given over many, many years. If he does say, look, I am going to fast track it, then he's got to set up a process, and that process is with an expert consenting panel. And that's got to be headed by a judge or a senior lawyer, a person of that nature. And they have to get evidence from a number of different people, and there are some listed parties, Forest and Bird is one, Environmental Defence Society, so there's some people of that side as well as development side, and Chambers of Commerce. So it's quite a number of people who can be invited to make a comment, but they don't necessarily get heard. In other words, they're just putting in a written submission, and the panel can choose to be heard or not. The panel gets all that stuff, and it says we're making a decision, and it makes a decision, and either grants consent or doesn't grant consent. So you can see there can be some input, but it won't be by us. It'll be by a few organisations at best. So we don't think that that's the right way to go with something that's as precious as this piece of land. So final two things to say. What's proposed? Well, there are people in this room who can probably tell us what's proposed. We don't know. All we can do is glean what we can from comments that have been made and what's been in the press. We understand something around the order of 700 to 800 houses up the top. We understand up to 27 metres high buildings in some places. We understand some additional commercial development in that area. We understand a cable car from Shelley Bay to the summit. And we think it covers something that's been variously presented between 8, 11.7 and 15 hectares. Those are the kind of areas of the scale of it. And we also don't know anything about the plans for servicing or infrastructure or transport access. And so what we've said, the conclusion here, is there is clear recognition by all the parties as we've gone through this process of the importance of Watts Peninsula. Landscape, heritage, cultural, biodiversity, all of those things. The current and proposed zoning does not permit development of this nature at all. And so the only way you should get it, the normal way you should get it, is to say, hey, I want to do something here. Can we sit down? Can we work out a plan change? Can we work this through together? We think this is what we want. We work that out, and we'll do a plan change to deliver what it is that we agree. Not that you go and try and get it through without anybody getting a decent say. So some development may be possible, but it's got to be sympathetic and appropriate to the support side. There are clearly issues with transport and infrastructure. There are two processes underway, the district plan process and the fast track process, which if either was successful would effectively mean you don't get a meaningful say. And so what we're asking for, and we've said this to the Minister, and there are submissions in front of the hearings process, is to reject the fast track, to reject the plan changes which are being suggested, and please, can we all sit down and work out what we want for the future of this really, really precious place. It deserves it, and we deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Obviously, as you would have realised, there's an awful lot of people who care an awful lot about Mount Crawford, about the whole Miramar Peninsula. One of the people who knows a lot about it is Ihaya Poketapu. I think Ihaya's here. Yeah. I'd just like to ask Ihaya to come and speak. Ihaya has done all the research on the iwi history of the peninsula, which is very interesting and profound. He is now Uri of Taranaki Whanui, and he also has staged an occupation up by the Mount Crawford site and has views on what should happen there. So please welcome Ihaya Poketapu.
Tēnā tātou, e te hunga koe tāmai nei, ki kore tātou tēnei kore, ki kare own the Mātai Moana, that is a maunga, one of our maunga around our home. It's an ancestor, so for us it's culturally significant, for want of a better term. It's nationally significant, and internationally significant. In the main because it contains 4 parasites to ancient climate that represent the genesis of human occupation around the harbour. So with the Heritage Park, we fully support that. We had the opportunity to buy that as well. It's a huge bit of land to own. It's better off being in public ownership. We can co-manage it and share it together with people in Wellington such as yourselves. And it ensures the protection of those parasites and those climate. So we don't have a problem with the Heritage Park. Although it's being demarcated into 2 blocks, what we call the defence block and the corrections block, that means nothing to us. It's one moment, it's one block. And so, again, for want of a better term, the corrections block is part of our Treaty 7 as a RFR land, and we've been given 3 different